Today we have the Tamashii Nations Bandai figures by SH Figuarts. Now this is based off Batman and Superman from the movie Justice League. Now in my previous video I did a comparison of all the DC films and Mafex Batmans and Supermans from the movies Dawn of Justice and Justice League. So today I'll be opening the two SH Figuarts one and comparing them with the other figures. So you can clearly see that the two boxes in front of me are slightly different to each other. The Batman one was first released and the Superman arrived a bit later on. So you can see that the Batman figure has gone for the old style SH Figuarts box, where there is a nice cutout of the box to see the figure inside. As for Superman, it's just a photo of the figure and you cannot see the figure inside until you open it. So you can see that they're both nice figures based on the photos, and they do somehow resemble Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill, and this is the first time SH Figuarts have made a character or have made a figure on the two actors. Now firstly you can see that the box is slightly smaller compared to each other, so the Batman one is slightly thinner. So on the sides we have the two pictures of the figure. On the other side we have the Justice League logo with the names. At the bottom we have the two names, Superman and Batman, and at the top we have the logos. And on the back of the box there are some photographs of the figures in its poses. So I'm now going to unbox the two figures. So the first one will be the Batman figure. So inside there is a nice cardboard silver cutout as usual with their figures, and some manuals to show you how to install the accessories. So the figure includes 6 interchangeable hands, the grapple gun, a piece that is attached to the grapple gun, and a batarang. So here's the overall look of the Batman, and at first glance it looks very much like the one we see in the Justice League movie. We have the stocky build, the huge logo on the chest that stands out clearly from the suit. There's a nice gold detail on the belt and gloves, and some nice shading on the arms and legs. But one thing I like to point out was the promotion photos on the upper body seems to be slightly taller, whereas the figure itself is slightly lower. As you can see, only 2.5 of the six-pack is revealed, whereas the photo shows it's much higher. So maybe if they thought he was too tall, or the body proportions just didn't match up with the other Justice League line characters. So they've probably used a smaller peg inside. But overall I like the look of him. He looks more bulky like this. I've also realised the colouring on the suit isn't as dark as the one we see in the movie, whereas the Mafex Justice League figure is much more darker and the pattern looks more realistic to me. So again, maybe they wanted the logo to stand out more, so they've gone for a lighter colour. So to me this looks more like the Dawn of Justice suit. As for the cape, it's a nice material. It could be slightly larger, but there are bands on the two sides for shaping. So now let's take a look at the movements of the figure. So as expected, the SH Figuarts has plenty of points of articulation. The head does a 360 spin, the arms move forwards, backwards, sideways, as well as a bend. The hands twist all the way around. The same goes for the legs, so forwards, backwards, sideways, and a bend. The foot does a 360 spin, as well as the foot at the front does a slight bend. As for the body, there is a 360 spin, and the upper torso has a slight twist side to side. So now let's switch it up with some accessories. So now we've taken a look at the SH Figuarts Batman, let's put him side to side with the Mafex and DC figures. So here we have a comparison of the two Justice League Batman figures. The one on the left is the SH Figuarts and the one on the right is the Mafex one. So you can definitely see there is a difference in the colour. The Mafex one has a much darker tone with the more detail on the suit, whereas the SH Figuarts has a more lighter grey on the suit, probably to make the logo stand out more. I'll probably say that the Mafex one looks more realistic if you're comparing it to the movie. As for the head sculpts, I think they both look like Ben Affleck in their own way. The capes are slightly different. The Mafex goes for a more leather material and the SH Figuarts has a more cloth material, and it also has the band on the side to create the flight poses. As for the body proportions, I think they both made a good effort in making it as detailed as it could. Now the articulation, you can't go too much wrong with both of these figures. I think they both do some very good poses. If I had to choose one, I'll probably go for the Mafex figure as it looks more realistic, whereas the SH Figuarts has more of a comic look, but that doesn't make the SH Figuarts a bad figure. So overall I'll give the Mafex a 8 out of 10 and the SH Figuarts a 7 out of 10. So now let's take a look at the Superman figure. So there is no cardboard background with this figure, but there is a manual. So alongside this figure we have 4 interchangeable hands and a head sculpt with the heat vision eyes. So here's the overall look of Superman, and at first glance it's a very good figure. The colours are vibrant and the logo is very detailed. I think the blue on the suit is in a much darker tone, so that makes the logo stand out even more. Now it has a very nice head sculpt, and I'll say that it does resemble Henry Cavill, and it's probably better than the Mafex Dawn of Justice and the DC film ones, and it's definitely better than any of the Multiverse or Movie Masters figures of Henry Cavill in the past. Now we're going to do a comparison with the Justice League Mafex one a bit later on. As for the cape, there is a band on the bottom but not on the sides, whereas the Batman had the ones on the sides but not on the bottom. So this cape has actually followed the Mafex Dawn of Justice one, where the band is at the bottom, whereas the Justice League Mafex put it on the sides. Now let's take a look at the movements of the figure. So as expected with all SH Figuarts, there is plenty of points of articulation. So the head has a full 360 spin, the arms move forwards, backwards, sideways, and they also bend. The hands twist all the way around, and the same goes for the legs. They move forwards, backwards, sideways, and the foot does a full 360 spin, and the front of the foot has a slight bend. As for the body, it does a full 360 spin, and the upper torso can be tilted side to side with a slight turn. Now let's switch it up with the other accessories. So now let's put the Superman SH Figuarts with the Mafex and DC film ones. So now for a comparison of the two Justice League Supermans. The one on the left is the SH Figuarts and the one on the right is the Mafex one. Now to me both of these Supermans are quite equal and very similar, whereas the Batman ones you can definitely tell there was a massive difference in the colour. So on the SH Figuarts on the left is a much darker blue tone, whereas the Superman Mafex one is much lighter. Now in terms of the actual colouring, I think they both did a very good job. Probably the Mafex one has a slightly shinier look. As for the capes, they're both very similar again, but there is a band on the bottom for the SH Figuarts, whereas the Mafex one has the band on the sides. So it really depends on what you prefer in terms of the flight poses. So I think they both resemble Henry Cavill. The SH Figuarts may have a slightly better colour tone, whereas I think the Mafex one has gone for more of a pale look. As for who looks like Henry Cavill, I think they both have their resemblances. I think the hair on the Mafex may be slightly better, but the skin tone on the SH Figuarts is probably more realistic. Now as for articulation, you can't go too much wrong with all these figures. They both do some fantastic poses. But there's one other thing I didn't mention in the Batman comparison, is that the Mafex figures has a stand. That explains why the SH Figuarts figures actually stand better in my opinion. But I think it would have been good if the SH Figuarts had a stand, so you can do the Superman flight poses. So overall I think both of these are great figures. It's very hard to choose which one is better. In my opinion, I'll probably choose the SH Figuarts simply because of the overall look. Just looks more like Superman from Justice League. And as for the Batmans, I did say that the Mafex one was better. So here are the two figures side by side, and I think it makes a very good set. They both stand out with their colours, so we have Batman in the black and grey, Superman in the red and blue. And they both go well with the body proportions, they have the similar capes, and the head sculpts do resemble the actors from the movie. So overall a very good looking figure and a great collection. So not including the Hot Toys or Mezco, I think these four may be the best Batmans and Supermans of Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill, if you're comparing it to the likes of Multiverse, DC Films and the Beast Kingdom. So now let's take a look at all the Batmans and Supermans put together. So that is it for the comparisons of the figures. They all have their good and bad points. Let me know which one you prefer. If you enjoyed this video, please give a thumbs up. You can also subscribe for more videos.